Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Transformers Studio Series 86 Deluxe Class Arcee. Now the reason why I picked Arcee here is because of a vote I did on my community tab where I asked you, the viewers, which figures on my collection would you like to see reviewed next? And only 3 people voted, so I want to thank those 3 people who did vote. And 2 out of the 3 votes went to Arcee, so here we are with Studio Series 86 Arcee. Enough with the explanation, let's take a look at first the packaging. First off, here we have Arcee's box. Again, very elegant, really nice box, very coherent artwork that all of the Studio Series figures have. We have a render of Arcee, the Transformers, the movie. She's number 16 out of these 86 figures because they all have the number 86, but then a smaller number showing the figure. Here we also have, you'll notice a sticker here of a discount since I got her off Macy's at their toy section. Now brand is Toys R Us. Very happy to see Toys R Us return, and she was only $12. So yeah, pretty cheap. You can see here. A look at the back. It takes 18 steps to transform. It says Battle for Autobot City. And now let's take a look at the extra parts, that being the manual and the backdrop. And here's Arcee's manual. Again, as I mentioned with the box, I really like how coherent the art style is here with all the Studio Series products. Now, in terms of Studio Series figures, Deluxe, Voyager, Commander, Leader, etc., I only have two Deluxe figures, that being Arcee and the rest of the beasts Bumblebee. But they have a very similar art style in the manual, so that's really cool. And now let's take a look at the backdrop. And here's the backdrop. Again, very coherent between all the other Studio Series backdrops. We have Autobot City there being attacked by the Decepticons. It has a logo for the 86 film. And now to take a look at all this, let's take a look at the base figure herself, Arcee. And finally, here we have Arcee. Now, this Arcee figure is based off of her G1 design. Of course, all these 86 movie figures are based off of G1 looks, and this figure looks fantastic. Now, an obstacle that this figure had is that in the movie, Arcee had a very slim, very thin design. Of course, being the first female Transformer, and she barely made it into the movie because originally Hasbro did not want Arcee to exist. They just thought it was weird to have a female Transformer. Thankfully, she at the end was accepted into the movie, and even after the movie, she never got an actual G1 toy. So, out of all the characters in that movie, Arcee was one of the few who never had a single toy. During the 80s, there's no like G1 made out of die-cast metal Arcee. It wasn't until like the 2000s where a transforming Arcee came out. So this is not the first G1 inspired Arcee, but I believe it's the most accurate. Zooming into her details, you can see really nice face sculpt. I really like the sort of Princess Leia look she has going on. Really nicely detailed with the pink and the white and some of the gray. Again, the issue here comes in how thin she actually is of her, female shape. So let's put her here. The sign, you can see that she's basically carrying the entire car, the vehicle mode on her back. This is referred to in the Transformers collector community as a shell former. A Transformer who basically has the entire car at the back. And if you remove the whole back part, it's basically 2 separate things. So the car and the robot can be separate parts. But I believe that in the movie she did have a bit of a backpack. And another issue that because of her thin nature, because of her, thin legs, she is very back heavy. So I suggest to be careful because multiple times I've had issues having her stand. But apart from that, she looks very accurate. This is definitely G1 Arcee. Now, I don't have any other G1 inspired Arcee figures to compare her to. So now let's take a look at the articulation. So, starting off with the articulation, she has a really cool ball joint at the head so she can look side to side, and even all that way up. They're about to look on how the Decepticons are about to destroy Autobot City. She can look down to this range, which is pretty awesome. Nothing at the waist, except for this slight part, which that is mainly because of the transformation. ball joints at the arm, which can bend pretty awesome. As you can see, really good movement here at the arms, nothing at the hand or the wrist. I believe this is called a thigh swivel, the movement here at this part of the legs. Knee bend, which is pretty great, and a pivot here at the foot. This will also work for the transformation. And overall, she's really poseable. I really like how poseable this Arcee actually is. Like, check out this pose I just got her in. Now again, I suggest to be careful when posing her because of how massive her backpack is. And now, let's take a look at her only accessory. Arcee's only accessory is this blaster, which does seem to be very accurate. Now, it's cast completely out of gray plastic, and bringing it to Arcee, you can see that it fits very nicely into her hand. It just rests there, and it looks good. And something else I noticed on Arcee, which I forgot to mention when showing her details, let me zoom in again. You can see that the hand detail has been individually sculpted, and slightly moving her here, you can see the way that the hand is a much more natural looking sculpt, where usually the hand is like a fist shaped just to hold the weapon. Well, in this case, it kind of just rests in her hand, which again, that looks fantastic. I think it really looks a much more natural holding hand for Arcee. In this case, it is a blaster that she just holds in her hand, while as for stuff like the Rise of the Beast figures, they deal with many of those that transforms out of their arm. But now let's take a look at Arcee in some size comparisons. First off, here we have the Studio Series 86 Deluxe Arcee next to the Transformers Rise of the Beasts Core Class Arcee. It's insane to think that these two are meant to be the same character. You can see kind of some of the character traits, like the massive backpack and the shape of the head. And I honestly like both of these, but in terms of a figure, the quality, I think the 86 Arcee is a lot better. And this is an issue that a lot of Transformers collectors have with this Rise of the Beasts Arcee, thinking that she really should have been like a small deluxe class figure, because we have seen very small deluxe figures like the War for Cybertron Bumblebee and Cliff Jumper are very short figures, and even for the Studio Series 86, they brought Cliff Jumper back. So I'd say that they should try to make the Rise of the Beasts Arcee into a small deluxe. But again, it's kind of cool just seeing how different Arcee has been throughout the years, and I sadly don't have any other Arcee figures, so I don't have like the Prime Universe Arcee or the Michael Bay era Revenge of the Fallen Arcee, so I'm sorry if I can't do any other Arcee comparisons, but let's do some other Transformers comparisons. And here we have Arcee next to the only other Studio Series 86 figure / a War for Cybertron Siege Starscream. Now, you'll definitely notice here a massive size difference, because Starscream is a Voyager class figure, which was repackaged, added some accessories, and turned into a Leader class figure, while Arcee is a Deluxe. And kind of a fun fact, I got both of these off discounts. Again, Arcee was $12, and Starscream, I ended up finding him in Facebook Marketplace for $30 instead of the $55 price that Leader class figures usually are, and he even came bundled with the 86 movie. So yeah, both of these have been amazing deals. And here we have Arcee next to the only other Studio Series Deluxe in my collection, that being Bumblebee. Literal 40-year difference between the designs. And here we have Arcee next to the Bumblebee movie Core Class Shockwave. I believe Shockwave was in the 86 movie, so hopefully a Studio Series 86 one happens. And here's Arcee next to some War for Cybertron Kingdom figures. We have the Deluxe Class Air Razor, the Core Class Bumblebee, and his included accessory, the Exosuit Spike with Wiki. And I think it's cool just to see the difference between how some of these mainline figures have been able to be just as good as some Studio Series. And finally, the last Transformers comparison. Here we have Arcee next to the Transformers Rise of the Beasts mainline Voyager Optimus Prime. Now, that's it for Transformers comparisons. In order to not make this part too long, we're just gonna make a quick fire through some non-Transformers figures. For example, some of the Jack-specific Sonic figures, so we have some of the 4-inch modern figures and the 2.5-inch classic. some Space Jam: A New Legacy Moose Toys figures, and finally, some Marvel Legends, specifically Star-Lord and She-Hulk, just to give you a better sense of scale. I'd say Arcee's around 5 inches tall, around that, maybe 5.5, I'm not entirely sure. But that's it for the size comparisons. Let's take a look at the transformation. And now, starting with Arcee's transformation, I'd suggest to be very patient with this figure, because there's a lot of stuff that happens. Now, first off, you have to detach all this part of her head, and basically you have to start undoing the backpack. You'll see how all that part comes up here, and there's basically the entire front of the vehicle mode. Now, here at the back, you can see how basically the entire car is on her back. So, yeah, I also be very careful because the transformation feels kind of fiddly at some points. I kind of feel like some parts might end up snapping. So again, be very cautious. The arms have to enter these parts, which will sometimes get caught in the joints. Again, be very careful. You can kind of hear some plastic cracking, and hopefully nothing breaks. I imagine that's also why she was on disc. I mean, some people feel like this transformation is way too frustrating to go through. Extend this entire piece. This is where the fake waist joint comes into play. How to move these pieces like so. That's also how the ankle rocker pivot also works here. Again, several of the articulations on this figure are for the transformation. Yeah, it's kind of frustrating at some points, I have to be honest. I remember I had to watch a video in order to understand this figure, and fun fact, I was watching Prime vs. Prime's amazing review of this figure. Accidentally, I watched it earlier the day I ended up buying this figure, so that was a wild coincidence. I was watching a video on this figure the same day I ended up buying the figure. And, let's see, just compress it a bit like so. And there's Arcee in her vehicle mode. And getting into Arcee's vehicle mode, I really like the sleek nature of the design. Again, you kind of saw in the transformation how basically this is her backpack. And also, something else I forgot to mention is that at the back, her wheels, I'm not sure if I did the transformation wrong, but the wheels don't really roll that well, so it's just to be careful. These are, I believe they're called mushroom pegs, the way that they're attached, and these are usually not very smooth in terms of rolling them in. I believe they're called pinned on, the perfect wheels, the one that roll out very nicely. Swing into the details, really well applied paint. You can see that she only has a single transparent piece, that being the windshield. It's some kind of Cybertronian sports car. I don't remember if in the 86 movie or at any occasion Arcee transformed. I'm curious if she did she transform just like this figure? Now bringing here her blaster, you can actually store it underneath all this part. You can kind of see how the arms, the legs, and the head are all compressed. There you go, just add it there, and it doesn't really hinder any of the vehicle mode. Now, there have been other Arcee figures with this kind of vehicle mode, slightly larger, slightly smaller, slightly more paint, slightly less paint. I believe the last one that came out was the Earthrise / War for Cybertron Arcee, which I believe came out in like 2019, 2020, around then. And I remember that also their version of another important female Autobot, that being Elita 1, also had the same vehicle mode, just slightly differences, especially the color scheme. But I really like this vehicle mode. And now let's do some vehicle mode comparisons. First off, here we have Arcee next to, again, the Studio Series Rise of the Beasts Bumblebee. And just to give you a sense of scale, you'll definitely notice that, of course, Bumblebee is the larger vehicle. It's kind of funny to, like, how, in terms of the figures, Arcee is taller than Bumblebee in robot mode, but Bumblebee is longer in vehicle mode. Now, Bumblebee is meant to be a real vehicle, a real off-road 1977 Camaro, while here Arcee is meant to be a Cybertronian vehicle. So, yeah, there's a massive difference, of course, of the planets these vehicles were made in, but I'm not really sure if the scale would be right, but I imagine it'd be right. So that's kind of it for this comparison. And here's the Studio Series 86 Arcee next to the Core Class Rise of the Beasts Arcee. So yeah, a massive difference again, especially in the size, since originally Arcee usually transformed into a car, while the newer versions of Arcee turned into a motorcycle. Now, honestly, I'm not gonna start a debate here on which vehicle is better. I guess it's cool to sometimes have a bike transformer, especially like how in Rise of the Beasts and a few other iterations, what Arcee could do, that she could project a hologram of a driver on the bike, because of course it'd be suspicious to see a bike that drives itself. But overall, the scale's interesting here. Of course, Core Class is a lot smaller because it's a motorcycle. So, in some versions, Arcee is also it really depends. But that's it for this comparison. And here are the Core Class Bumblebee, Spikewood Wiki, and Core Class Shockwave. Again, just to give you a better sense of scale. In this case, Bumblebee is noticeably smaller. Well, in this case, he should be an officially licensed Volkswagen Beetle. Let me remove here Spikewood Wiki and Shockwave. Two G1 inspired vehicle modes. Of course, in this case, the car is unlicensed. In this case, well, there's not real need of a license. It's a Cybertronian vehicle. And that's kind of it for this comparison, just to give you, again, a better sense of how Arcee scales in these other cars. And finally, here we have Arcee next to Optimus Prime. In this case, Optimus Prime is considered a very small Deluxe. A small Voyager. And that's kind of it for the size comparisons. Let's do the reverse transformation. Now, getting into the reverse transformation. Again, I suggest to be very careful, especially with these parts, because in multiple times I feel like they're going to snap off. There we go. Oh, and sometimes I'll forget to flip this piece down. You basically have to compress the entire backpack. I really hope I can show that right with the camera. It can be kind of fiddly at some moments, and maybe that's also why this figure is not that much of a hot seller. And just flatten the feet, and that's... Let's peg in the blaster again. And finally, there's Arcee back in her robot mode. And finally, here to wrap things up here with the Studio Series 86 Deluxe Class Arcee. This is a great figure. Now, I don't have any of the other, like, Earthrise for Cybertron Arcee, so I'm sorry I can't do any other comparisons in that regard, but I like this figure. Now, the only thing I don't like is how fiddly a transformation can be, but I usually just keep her on her robot mode because it's very accurate to her look in the 86 movie, or at least in G1. The artwork that is used on the box, it's really, really accurate enough to be in the Studio Series. Now, again, I got her discount for $12, so I'd suggest if you find her at that price, she's great. For $25, yeah, that's the average price of a Deluxe, I get it. But again, she's very thin, she basically has the entire car on her back. So, unless you really like Arcee, well, I don't know, it depends on what you think about this figure, what you think about the character. But that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know in the comments what you think about the Studio Series 86 Arcee. Thank you all to the 2 people that voted for this figure. Next up will be the figure with only 1 other vote. And that's it. Thanks for watching.